Class, welcome to week 7 of loss and bereavement. I cannot believe we have made it this far. It feels like we have been learning a lot of knowledge in a short period of time. So I hope you all are doing okay and keeping up with all your other courses as well. So we have covered a lot of ground so far. We've talked about death, death traditions, funeral traditions, different cultures. We've talked about death systems and the death penalty. And this week for chapter 5 and 6 for week 7, we're really focusing on healthcare and hospice, palliative care, and hospitals and the role that they play at end of life. As well as, of course, our end of life wishes with our advance directive, living will, and all of those things. So I hope you all are working on your advance directive. Remember, those are due on October 6th. So please make sure that you watch the video I posted about those so that you can have your assignment ready. But go ahead and turn those in for October 6th, okay? If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. So I wanted to just go over a few things with you for this week because I think it's a little bit confusing with hospice and palliative care and then the role that hospitals play. And I wanted to just go over a few things with you. So first of all, in week 7 in Canvas, you'll be able to see some examples of advance directives and some information about living wills. I also posted a link to a very short video that Lee Health put out that really explains the difference between palliative care and hospice care. And I think sometimes it's helpful to have different ways to learn things. So you have my video, you'll have that video, you'll have the PowerPoint, and you'll have the textbook. So I'm hoping that with these different mediums that you'll be able to learn in different ways. So let me know how that goes. So let's talk about what palliative care and hospice care are. So you know that I work at Tidewell Hospice, and when I worked at the Arcadia Hospice House as the hospice house social worker. So it's really important to understand what palliative care is and hospice care because they're a little bit different, and our patients want to know, and so do our clients and our families. So palliative care really is comfort measures. When you have a terminal illness or when you have a life-threatening illness, this is something that you can even receive in a hospital. You can receive palliative care alongside your curative treatment, alongside your chemo, and all those other things that you might be having. And hospitals are really good about offering that to you. And you'll see that in the Lee Health video. They really are advocates for palliative care. And they even mention in that video that many people don't take advantage of this service because they're really quick to connect palliative care and hospice care. So when they hear palliative care, they think, oh my gosh, I'm dying, I don't want that. And they don't understand that they have this ability to have comfort measures during their traumatic, life-altering illness while they also have their curative treatment. So palliative care really is an important part of the process of healing in your hospital care and getting better. Now we have hospice care. Hospice care really is comfort measures and symptom management for the end of life when you have been diagnosed with an illness, a terminal illness that says you have 6 months or less to live. So it's a very, very particular structured type of criteria. You have to have this terminal illness, you have to have 6 months or less to live, and a doctor has to deem you 6 months or less to live. Now, hospice care is not free. So hospice benefit comes from Medicare and Medicaid, and that covers your hospice care. That covers the nurse, your interdisciplinary team, which includes the nurse, the doctor, CNAs, the social workers like us. That includes a pharmacist, everything that you need. Your team would be there for you, and that would be covered by the benefit. And then if you're not old enough to have that benefit and you have private insurance, that will cover it as well. Now for my organization at Tidewell, we're a nonprofit, so we actually don't turn away any person because of their inability to pay. So we provide them with this hospice benefit free of charge even if they can't pay, which I think is really cool. When I was working at the Arcadia Hospice House, we would get a lot of homeless people. We would get a lot of indigent people, and so they had no ability to pay. They had no insurance, and it was really cool to see that we treated them just like every other patient. They got the highest level of care. They were given comfort measures at the end of life, and they stayed in our hospice house until their life ended. because that was the only place they had to be. That was the only place they could be because they were homeless and had no other options. So I think that's really cool that nonprofit hospices are able to do that. Now there are differences. We have nonprofit hospices, we have for-profit hospices, but that's not to say that for-profit hospices don't also give charity care. They do give out thousands, if not millions of dollars of charity care every year. They just have different expectations and they have different policies for that. I'm not really too familiar with those because, again, mine is a nonprofit. So you guys know that you have Hope Hospice in Lee County, and we have Avow Hospice in Collier County, and we also have VITAS around. And hospice care is really done by the certificate of need. So the government says that we have this certificate of need for a specific county, and as long as the hospice that's in that county is meeting that need, then no other hospice can come in and offer that care. Now, that's not the same as palliative care because, again, many of our hospitals cover palliative care, but I'm strictly talking about hospice care and an actual organization that's called a hospice. So that certificate of need really is important for the longevity of hospice. For instance, my hospice, Tidewell, we cover 4 counties. No other hospice has come in the last 40 years that we've been here because we've continually met the need. So basically we're meeting the need for the demand of those who require hospice. So that's pretty cool. Now, there is some buzz about possibly the certificate of need going away, which would then allow more hospices to come in, and there wouldn't be this, hey, we're meeting the need, so we no longer need you. Just anyone could come and do hospice care. And so then, if that was to happen, that really puts a lot of pressure on the individual hospice organizations to really provide excellent, spectacular care, to provide the end-of-life care that every person deserves, and to also offer a lot of complementary services. So for instance, Tidewell offers pet therapy and massage and Reiki and essential oils. We offer a lot of different things that other hospices may not offer. We have a harpist that comes. We do music therapy and art therapy with our patients. There's just a lot of things that our hospice offers and a lot of hospices offer that, again, set us apart from others. And so then when someone has an option to choose, oh, do I want this hospice or that one? They can choose based on all the services that are offered. So another benefit of hospice that's through the Medicare Medicaid benefit is that we are required to provide bereavement care for patients and their families while the patient is a patient of the hospice. But we are also responsible for providing them bereavement care and support up to 1 year after this person dies in our care. So that is a mandated law. Our company actually provides counseling indefinitely, so they can come regardless of their affiliation to Tidewell. They can come to our children's program, which is Blue Butterfly. They can come to that for free, and they have no reason. If they've been connected to Tidewell, that's great. If not, they can still come. And the same with our adult program. So we do provide individual counseling and group counseling for adults, and they can come for as long as they need to. And I think that's really cool. And that's another thing that our hospice is unique for. We provide that service at no cost to our patients and our clients. So I think that's really cool. And a lot of other hospices do that too. So that is also going to be an assignment you have coming up. I'm asking you to visit a hospice or a morgue or a funeral home. So if you've never been to a hospice house before, go check it out. I think you'll be really impressed to see that it doesn't feel much like a hospital. It feels more like a home. The rooms are designed in such a way so that patients and their families can feel comfortable and safe. And just in a place where, like, okay, I feel safe here and happy here to have my end of life here. So, and again, you're going to have an assignment at the end of our course that talks about what would your death look like? What would your end of life look like? And after you see a hospice house, you might feel differently than you do now about if you'd like to die at hospice. So hospice care is actually provided anywhere where the person calls home. So hospice care can be provided in a patient's home, in a nursing home, in an assisted living. It can be also provided in a residential area, and of course in a hospice house. And so for us, for Avow, for Hope Hospice, all of those locations have hospice houses all around town. For instance, Hope has multiple locations in Bonita, in Lehigh, in Cape Coral, in Fort Myers. So those houses have multiple beds that patients can go to. Now, the thing that many people don't know is that people don't actually go to a hospice house or go on hospice care to die. People think the minute they hear hospice, like, oh my gosh, I'm dying. But actually, that's a myth. The real goal of hospice is just to provide comfort at the end of life. So if you think about it, if you have two choices, do I want to die? You're dying anyway, right? So do you want to die with pain and with discomfort, with no support and no services, or do you want to die with services and support and a team and comfort measures and medication that takes away your pain? So really those are the two options that we have when we're talking about hospice care, and not that many people understand that. And so that's why learning this in this course is so important, because you as social workers play such an important role in healthcare. We play such an important role in end of life as well. And so if we can have a clear understanding of what hospice is, we can help others in the community. So at Tidewell, we actually have a whole team of liaisons, and their job is to go out in the community and connect with doctors, hospitals, pediatricians, all of these physician type jobs and atmospheres, to help them understand that, hey, you have these patients in your ward or in your hospital, and they very much are appropriate for hospice. If they have a diagnosis of 6 months or less, why are you not referring them to hospice care right now? Why are you waiting until the day before they die to say, oh, hospice, you should come in, they're dying? Really, we want to be in there 6 months. We want those people with us for 6 months, so that way they can be getting all the care and all the services that they really require and that they need. And so back to the hospice house, many people think they actually go to the hospice house to die, and that does happen. Many people go there and they do end up dying there. But many people go to the hospice house for symptom management. So if you think about it, if you're dying and you're in excruciating pain and you're on hospice care, but you're getting this care at home, you don't have a round-the-clock nurse there. You have medication at your home that your caregiver, your wife, your husband, your daughter, your son, adult daughter, adult son, anyone in your home can be a caregiver. That person is helping to administer that medication to you. That person is helping to take care of you. Hospice care is not a 24-hour nurse that sits in your house and stares at you. So, for instance, if that happens and you're on hospice care and you're in your home and you're in excruciating pain, you can actually call up your hospice nurse and they will transfer you to our hospice house so that you can have pain management. So you may stay in our hospice house for 1, 2, 3 days, maybe more, but our goal when you're there is to get your pain managed. What does that mean? That means we might employ some of our comfort measures, some of our complementary services. We might bring in a massage. We might bring in dog therapy. We might bring in Reiki or essential oils, any of those therapies that really could be helpful for you to help you calm down and bring down the stress level. But additionally, we're talking about morphine and medications, and they do a lot of anxiety medications on top of morphine to really keep you calm. And it's not about hastening your death. That's not what hospice is. It's simply a way to keep you calm, keep you comfortable while your body continues to shut down organs, and your life continues on its natural course towards death. So a lot of people don't know that, and I think it's really important to understand what really happens at hospice. So I want to talk to you also just about what are the roles of a social worker at hospice. And so many of you know that social workers have a very vast role. We can find jobs in a variety of places, which I think is so important to always remember, because many people don't credit social workers as high as we should be credited. But when you are master's level social worker, even if you're licensed, you are held to a very high regard because of the clinical skills that you learn in school. So always keep that in mind. So for instance, at hospice, you have the ability to be a hospice social worker. So that would be being in a hospice house, being on a home team. You might even be on a facility team, which means you would actually visit patients in their nursing home or in the assisted living. And you would go and check on them. You could check on them biweekly or bi-monthly, and to make sure that they have everything that they need. You're really seen as the liaison between the nursing staff or the medical staff and like the family, because the family trusts you right away. Your job is to build rapport, help them to understand that you're here for them. You're here to make this experience a positive one. You're there to answer questions and provide education. So a lot of times you're there to explain this is normal. What you're experiencing with your loved one, with our patient, is completely normal. And you're going to continue to see this, this, and this. And at the end of life, these types of noises are normal, or at the end of life, these types of behaviors are normal. For instance, people stop eating and drinking at the end of life because the organs are shutting down, and so the organs can't actually process food or water or any kind of drinks or anything. And if you think about it, families really struggle with that because they're nurturers. They want to provide food and comfort. But at the end of life, people don't need that. So oftentimes the social worker's job is to educate the family so that they understand, like, you don't need to provide them with any food or water. They actually don't need that. It actually would provide them with more pain than comfort. And so again, at hospice, our job is to provide comfort. So our job as a social worker is really to provide that education to the families so that they understand their role in the care of their patient. So in addition, our role sometimes has to do with discharge planning. So when I was at the hospice house, when families would come and the patient would come, if we got their pain managed, then they were able to go back home. But sometimes the caregiver wasn't wanting to take care of that person anymore, unfortunately. And so that meant that I needed to find them a place to live. So that might mean you find them a nursing home or an assisted living, depending on their abilities. And that is a really hard part of life and working in hospice, because the patient sometimes is not ready to go anywhere else but home. Or they thought they were going to live out their life here at the hospice house. So these are all things that we have to provide education to our families and to the caregivers on. In addition, it's really important to assess to make sure that the family understands what's happening to the patient. So sometimes I would meet with families and they would have no idea that this was the end, that this person was actually dying this time, like that this person was not going to leave our hospice house and that they were going to die here. Families weren't understanding that. And so my job, it was to explain that to them. And I really liked in the textbook, they went over some guidelines on how to talk to someone about death. And actually some of them I used in the hospice house, because you want to assess what do they already know. Sometimes they do know a lot and you don't even have to be the bearer of bad news. But one of our jobs is to ensure that they have a clear understanding of what's happening. You actually have to chart on that. You actually have to put in the documentation that the family verbalize that they understand end-of-life signs and symptoms. And so it's important that you as a social worker have a clear understanding of what are the signs and symptoms at end of life. What is that gurgling noise? Is that normal? Why are they not eating? Is that normal? Being able to understand all these things and to verbalize them to your patients and your clients so that they feel heard, educated, and understood. Okay. So it's in addition to all of that, so being a hospice house social worker, being a home team social worker, you can also be a grief counselor. So at Tidewell, our grief counselors have a variety of backgrounds and master's level education. So we have mental health counselors, we have social workers, we have Masters of Divinity, chaplains, and they all work as grief counselors. And so grief counselors at hospice provide the patient and the family with anticipatory grief. So what does that mean? That means that there's a lot going on inside of a person when they're anticipating that death coming. The patient is anticipating that they're going to die. A lot of stuff comes up in a person when that's happening. They have that unfinished business. They have those what ifs or woulda, coulda, shouldas of life. If you're working with a veteran, you might see some PTSD come up. You might see some I wish I didn't do that in my life, or I wish I would have done XYZ. Or there might be some unresolved issues, like with family members or children, that the patient wants to resolve before they die. Or they might have some end of life wishes, like they might want to do some traveling, or they might want to talk to someone they haven't talked to in a while. So again, all of that is our job, and the grief counselor can help with that too. So the grief counselor meets with the patient or the family before the death as well, if they wished. And then, of course, they provide the grief counseling after the patient has died to the family. And like I mentioned, at our particular hospice, we can provide that care to anyone in the community and anyone who's been through our hospice program. So I think that's really cool. So you can kind of see the different jobs that you can have as a social worker. Of course, you can always work your way up to management and to be in administration. And my boss is actually the VP of Grief and Education, and he is at LCSW. So there are some cool jobs you could have as a social worker. And learning these core skills are the main important part for you to be able to get to these higher levels and to be able to do more things. So I hope that was helpful for you, because I think it's really important to understand the differences. So also, let's just talk a little bit about informed consent. So I hope you read chapter 6, because it really goes into great detail about why you need your advance directive and why it's important to have one and what could happen if you don't have one. So informed consent also is important, because we have the right to be informed about what's happening to us and what kind of treatment we're getting, and we have the ability to say yes or no to those things. But if you are incapacitated and you are unable to do those things, you're going to want to make sure that you have someone who can speak for you, who's going to be able to live out your wishes and to do what you want. So I just wanted to go over, there was a story in here that I really thought was interesting, and it reminded me that I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw it. So on page 180 in chapter 5, this story that says, when my father went back to the hospital a year ago, he was clearly close to the end. His lungs and liver were barely functioning. His abdomen was filling with fluid, and he could no longer lift himself out of bed. The hospital's doctors nonetheless treated him aggressively, punching a hole in his chest to insert a drainage tube, which quickly led to uncontrollable bleeding, an infection, and plunge in blood pressure. Within 12 hours, my father was in a coma with no chance of recovery, sustained only by a ventilator and a tangle of multiple IVs. He spent 4 days in the ICU until I overcame the resistance of 2 doctors and had the machines turned off, as my dad's living will suggested. Medicaid paid upward of $20,000 for the last days of my father's life, during which he received little comfort, moments of agonizing pain and fear, and all the medical care in the world, and then some. So I really like that, and I read it to you because I wanted you to hear it. And this is an amazing example of how this person should have been offered hospice care. This person should never have had any of those extreme measures, because the gentleman actually said that he doesn't want to be on a ventilator. He doesn't want those extreme measures. And so I read this to you because I want you to understand the importance of doing your advance directive. And I'm getting questions about, does someone have to sign it? Yes. You guys have to sign it, and so does your person, because the whole purpose of this assignment is for you to do the advance directive and talk to someone about it. Make sure someone knows your wishes so that this never has to happen to you, so that at the end of life you can have a peaceful death and not have chest tubes and blood pressure and bottling out and bleeding, and none of that is necessary. You can have a peaceful, calm death on hospice care if you put that in your living will, if you put that that's what you wish to have in your advance directive, and be as specific as possible. And if you have questions, review chapter 6. It really does a great job of going through everything that I've been talking about and everything that we need to include in our advance directive. So please review all of that too. So what did you guys think about the physician-assisted deaths? I always find those interesting and to see what the students and other colleagues think about that. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. But I find that one really interesting, just as interesting as the death penalty. But please review the 2 chapters. If you have questions, reach out to me. There's not going to be a discussion post this week. I'm not trying to overwhelm you. We will just do our advanced directive, which is due on the 6th, and no other discussion post, okay? Just please review this video, and please review the PowerPoints and the chapters. All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye.